Margaret teeters a bit behind me and puts her all into keeping up the pace, despite the fact that it's clear she doesn't have very much experience with that kind of thing. Our confidence is shattered when we turn down another path and are forced to come to a halt in the distance. We see a mass of slowly moving figures creeping our way. I narrow my eyes.
Prowlers.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the channel if you're new here. My name is Death by Pony. Today we're hopping back into Lake of Voices. Without further ado, let's hop in.
I turn to the guide's face one last time, begging him mentally. He is empty and unflinching.
It needs to be done. This is what it means to cross Sinlos.
The heavy words sink into me as I stare towards the void that eagerly awaits two of us. I won't go. The guide sucks in a breath, clearly disappointed.
Being without light is dangerous, even if you are close to another. The one who goes with me has no guarantee of making it across. You risk this entire journey being for naught. The correct decisions need to be made. Everyone should be aware of that.
His words cut deep. I have no logical reason to object to going if my only solution is choosing another for the same position. I thought it would be ready for this when it presented itself. I believe I had the strength that was only what I wanted to believe. Nothing that I haven't said anything despite plenty of opportunity, the guide continues.
I will not choose someone else, and neither will they. Can you do so? Who deserves to be saved and who lost in your mind?
A pit forms in my stomach as the responsibility of this unspeakable choice falls on my shoulders.
Stop this! It isn't helping!
I'm not the one who can stop it now.
I try to form a coherent sentence, but whenever I try to wrench them out, the words vanish from my tongue. Having lost his patience, the guide points a finger at Margaret almost accusingly.
I've noticed the attention you've given her. Is that what this is about? Do you want to sacrifice your position to give her a hope of safety? Or perhaps you would prefer the both of you being left so you remain together? Or does your relationship not matter after all and you don't care who gets the chance as long as you avoid a sense of guilt?
You're completely mad! Kika's reaction is what any normal human being would have. You can't pretend she's to blame!
I am aware. No one should have to take on such a grim task. That was why I did not ask it of you. I did it myself. However, that wasn't agreeable, so now the choice is hers, and it is time to decide.
I look over at Margaret and Bamele, hot tears flowing from my eyes. Take Bamele. The guide regards me with an unreadable expression. Without another word, he turns around and begins to walk down the bridge. Startled by the action, I take a step towards him. He turns just slightly to speak over his shoulder.
If any further discussion is needed, then you will have to do it amongst yourselves.
The guide pauses for a moment.
If you wish, you may follow. No one else is to do so.
He stares straight into Mele's face, referring to him without saying so directly. I stand frozen in place, shocked as the guide gets further away. It sinks in as the guide is actually leaving. He won't be coming back. I whip towards Bamele.
You have to go.
Mele gapes at me furiously.
If the choice was between the two of us, you should have gone.
The people need you more than they need me, Bamele.
That's a lie. Even if it weren't, I wouldn't care.
I don't intend on leaping into the lake. I will find a way to manage. I'm sharp and quick-witted, after all.
I weakly grin. Mele grimaces at the way I turned his own words against him.
Be safe, please. There isn't time left.
Oh, it's hot. Mele covers his eyes with his hand.
Damn you.
His face softens.
I will see you again. Somehow.
He lingers for only the briefest of moments before turning on his heel to catch up with the man was no longer my guide. It was almost unbearable to see him so hurt. He wanted to protect me as much as I wanted that for him. However, I still hold to my decision. My only regret is that it wasn't only myself who was left in the dark. We both stand alone, consumed by a creaking darkness. I gulp in a breath and exhale slowly, my eyes drawn back over to Margaret. It is difficult to face her after the choice I made, yet I am determined to accept my own decision and do whatever I can in order to still assure her safety. Margaret stares at me wordlessly with intensity. I feel compelled to look away from her again. I refuse to give in to that temptation. Neither of us says anything as we watch the other. Margaret's narrowed eyes never wavered as she peers into mine. What could she be thinking of? I can only guess. After a moment longer, Margaret sighs and breaks the staring war by looking downwards.
We can't be that far from the shore by now. We may as well try to make it there, right?
Right. But...
My sentence trails off as I drown in my regrets. Margaret shakes her head lightly.
Let's not talk about it. If I were in your place before, it's not as if I would have been able to make a better choice.
She paused for a moment to furrow her eyebrows.
And it is my own foolish fault that I ended up in this situation in the first place. Blaming you for any of it would be the act of a child.
It is painful to hear her speak in such a way. I don't deserve this much understanding, not after what I did. Still, she has a point. I shouldn't get caught up in my desire to apologize. This isn't over yet. The two of us dash forward and take another branching path out of the bridges. We continue to race across Sinless bridge after bridge. Many glossy arms reach up from the lake over the sides of the bridge towards our ankles. Luckily, we're able to pass by each one before any can grab hold. Margaret teeters a bit behind me and puts her all into keeping up the pace, despite the fact that it's clear she doesn't have very much experience with that kind of thing. Our confidence is shattered when we turn down another path and are forced to come to a halt in the distance. We see a mass of slowly moving figures creeping our way. I narrow my eyes.
Prowlers.
I turn behind me only to see more Nixie as they begin to rise up from the waters. They stretch their crooked limbs across the boards. Droplets of cold sweat begin to run down my back. There's no clear path any longer. Even if we light a match to set aside the bridge on fire, it's possible not all of them will leave, and then we'd be trapped by both flames and monsters. It would also put the others at risk if the flames spread to them. I slowly slid my hand down my side and reach for the hilt of my sword. I leave behind the broken lantern that won't do anything for us now.
Wait.
I keep a firm hold on the hilt of my sword. However, I make no move to draw it.
It isn't safe to get near those things without a light. And besides, I have an idea.
I steal a glance at Margaret between keeping an eye on the group of monsters surrounding us. She has a hand into her pocket and retrieves a small book. She opens up and tears out a page of thick paper, and pockets the rest of the book, crumples the paper into a ball. Margaret looks up at the creatures herself to make sure that they haven't drawn too near. Eyeing them intensely, she pulls something out of her pocket. With a start, I realize it's a match. Surely she won't. Margaret catches on to my worried expression, and she shakes her head.
I'm not going to throw this onto the bridges, if that's what you're thinking.
She focuses back to her supplies and ignites the match, lights the paper ball on fire, and tosses it off the side of the bridge, directly into the water. The incoming light scares off the Nixie, who scatter back into the depths. Amazingly, the light isn't immediately extinguished. It continues to burn atop the surface. The water is too dense to be disturbed by the slight weight of paper. I crack a large smile at the sight.
That's excellent. You are truly clever.
Margaret flashes me a grin of her own.
I would certainly hope so, considering how much credit I've rewarded myself for my supposed intelligence.
She reads a few more paper torches and starts walking forward, tossing them onto the lake in all directions. I follow along behind her, watching as the remaining Nixie retreat further away from the multiplying lights dancing on the water. As soon as the area is thoroughly cleared of danger, the two of us march on ahead. The sloshing sound of water captures our attention. I look back. Their motions from under the surface enough begin to displacing the water. The lights start to go out from the splashing, as if not becoming completely swallowed by the lake. Margaret and I share a glance with one another. We're mutually deciding not to linger. We stare at rushing across the bridges with renewed vigor and don't stop until the wet sound of crooked monsters long behind us. I take advantage of the break and look around once more with more care. It's nothing but the essence of Sinless bridges, fog, the lake itself. I can see neither the interloping guide nor the shore. We are completely and utterly lost in this labyrinth of ever-changing bridges. The atmosphere surrounding this place is even more oppressive and dense in the dark. Now that I have been forced to take in our situation, I'm engulfed by the sheer emptiness of it all. The silence is deafening. It then dawns on me what it means. I wildly turn my head to the left to scan the area. There's nothing here, not even a glimpse of movement. The black water waits almost peacefully in the gloom. It's unbelievable. Ugh. Sinlos is the Nixies' territory. They felt inescapable. However, this lake is vast. The Nixie are not omnipresent, nor omniscient.
Of course.
I feel a surge of hope and well up in my chest.
What are you talking about?
Margaret asked me through her exhausted, wheezing breaths.
There aren't any Nixie in this area of bridges as far as I can tell. We may not have to worry about them for now. We should take this opportunity to fully rest. Then we can progress somewhat slowly for a time. Capturing the attention of those beasts with loud steps is something we must avoid.
She perks up.
Yes, you're right. That sounds like a plan.
The two of us stand quietly together, regaining our strength for the path ahead. Being in such complete isolation with no end in sight is a strange sensation. It drains me of motivation, making me feel as though our existence has already been lost. But one look at Margaret is enough to shake me of such notions. We can't give up now. Despite the nothingness that encompasses us, we still have much to lose. After a short period of time, we start making our way across the bridges as cautiously as possible. Margaret and I walked together side by side. We stayed ever vigilant for any sound of danger from the lake. She sighs softly beside me with a shake of her head.
Oh, if only I had thought of that paper trick sooner. The guide might have let us stay.
Don't blame yourself for that. The guide likely would have said that it agitated the Nixie too much, or could set the bridges on fire accidentally and was too risky to attempt.
Margaret smirks slightly and snorts at my meager attempt to voice the guide's thoughts.
That is exactly what he would have said.
I nod while entranced by my own thoughts.
If anyone should be feeling regret right now, it would be me. The reason my lantern broke was because I had thrown it to assist the guide when we were on the island.
It was impossible not to have noticed your little act of heroism. I had been wondering if that was it.
I'm sorry.
Please don't apologize. Unfortunately, we can't just leave the guide to fend for himself like he does for us. You had to be sure he remained to lead the group. It's your tendency for decision-making that is probably why he wanted you to stay.
Don't doubt yourself, Margaret. Pangs of pain sting in my chest. No matter how much I try to ignore it, I feel terrible about making Margaret remain behind in this bleak spiraling maze while I chose someone else to accompany the guide. I dip my head down in a hot flush of shame.
You couldn't force the guide to take the both of us. You tried.
Tears form in the corners of my eyes at her gentle words.
You're far too kind, Margaret. No matter the situation, I still made a decision, and it wasn't to ensure your safety.
She hardens her face and looks at me seriously.
When the guide said that only you could go, a part of me was thankful. You would be fine with him. But I admit, another part of me disliked being the one left behind. Not by the guide, but by you. It's silly, I know. Still, in a way, it's comforting that at least we're still with one another, even counting the circumstances that led to this. Besides, with no lantern, no glasses, and an indifferent guide, I severely doubt that I'd be faring much better under his care.
Margaret grows wistful and speaks softly.
What I'm trying to say is that I never would have been able to make the kind of decision that you had to, and I think it made sense for everyone.
I feel tears well up in my eyes from gratitude to Margaret for all her kindness. She chuckles lightly.
If that isn't a sign that I'm not meant to be a guide myself, then I don't know what is.
I dry my tears with my sleeve with a small sniffle.
You've truly decided against that?
Yes, absolutely. I never want to see any lake again for as long as I live. Since I don't have any plans, I'll have to find a nearby village on the other side to stay out for a time. I'll decide what the next step on my path will be then.
Knowing Margaret won't be stepping on these bridges again after this night eases my heart greatly. The future is starting to look bright. Somehow I look at her shyly.
I would still like to help you, if that's possible.
A small bashful smile creeps onto Margaret's face.
Well, I suppose I could see what your town is like after all. I will need directions.
I beam widely at her. The air between us feels warm with light-hearted pleasance.
Directions are not nearly enough. For that journey, I will lead you myself. I'll be sure to bring you there safely, Margaret.
Aw, flirting. Margaret giggles under her breath.
Thank you. I'm positive you'll make for a better one than our last guide.
The two of us share a smile together for a moment's reprieve. However, for any of our wishes to come true, we need to refocus on the situation at hand. We allow the conversation to fade out. The last of our happy voices drift away from us and are absorbed into the mist. There is still not even a trace of Prowler on the bridge, nor any Nixie in the water. Both Margaret and I silently agreed to speed up a bit. I don't know how much ground we have left to cover. However, time is not a commodity we have to spare. We keep at this brisk pace for quite a while. However, eventually, we have to stop for a breather again. Very light but noticeable stirring comes audible from the lake. I hope dearly that it's only the wind. There is an inkling of fear inside me that it isn't. We cut our rush short and continue forward at an even quicker pace. After a while longer, we push ahead. The faintest silhouette of land appears on the horizon. I nearly can't believe what I'm seeing. I attempt to steady my rising heart rate. Getting close enough to land to seeing it only requires going towards it for long enough, but the true test is finding the bridge that will actually run aground. Still, we have an honest-to-goodness fighting chance. Margaret reaches over to take my hand into hers, squeezing lightly. I look at Margaret, reassuring. Her hold isn't out of fear, as it is so easily could be. This time, it's from determined anticipation. We start running, our footsteps in sync. We cross a long path and come across a strange sight. It's a bridge with curve and becomes more narrow in the middle than usual. Eyeing the dubious bridge warily, I grow nervous at the idea of getting that close to the edge. Yet, we've never seen anything like this before. Could this possibly mean that the bridge is important? Then I hear it, the whisper of the Nixie. There's no mistaking it. We've been found by them. Her confidence hasn't gone, but Margaret huddles a little closer to me. Margaret surveys the area, looking at the bridge and then to the lake. Her features are marred with concern. However, she managed to keep her brave face on.
We should keep going this way. There aren't any other branches here, and backtracking won't help us get to the shore. There's a bit of a limit on how much time we have to reach it.
I nod in agreement. At this point, going forward is our only option.
Could we possibly use burning paper to distract the Nixie again? It could keep those monsters away for long enough to cross this part. We could run after that.
Margaret doesn't reply immediately. She seems unsure. I realize it may not be possible to balance on the bridge while lighting and tossing paper torches all around.
Will you give me the supplies for it if there are any left? I'd like to make some.
Margaret dons a lopsided grin. She reads me as well as I do her.
You are very sharp, Kika, and very kind.
I blush slightly at her words, a smile from within growing on my face.
I'll crumple the paper ahead of time and hand them to you as we go. Then you can light and throw.
I gesture in agreement. The compromise is solid. Neither of us should be at too much risk if the job is shared between both her and myself. Margaret begins the monotonous job of tearing pages out of the book and forming them into balls while I keep watch for any signs of danger. As I stand quietly amid the rippling and crumpling of paper, I can't help but let some curiosity leak out.
What is, or rather was, that book?
Margaret rips another page out of it as she answers.
It was a blank notebook. I had been filling it.
The fact that she'd brought with her on this journey that makes the contents easy to guess. It also makes it clear why she is so readily tearing it up. I take a step out on a limb and attempt to brighten the mood with some teasing comment.
This is the second time you've saved me by finding something unexpected to light on fire. Should I be concerned that you have a pattern of setting what's around you ablaze?
She's an arsonist! Her eyebrows shoot up and she abruptly snorts.
No, you should not. The Nixie are afraid of light. It has nothing to do with me.
Okay. I still thought it best to check.
We both share a small laugh. It certainly didn't compare to Margaret's skill in that area, but it pleases me that we were able to enjoy it regardless. Once we have a fair amount of pieces to work with, I take my own set of matches, ignite one by striking it on my rough leather belt, and Margaret hands me a piece of paper. I light the paper ball and toss it onto the abyss lake, the light jostled by a lone wave that definitely could not have been caused by the wind. Two of us begin to cross the bridge, forcibly steady legs. I light up a makeshift torch one after another, tossing it wherever another flickers out. The water around us churns like a mill pond. However, nothing within the lake has surfaced thus far. I toss another fireball onto the water. Something beneath it jerks violently and precisely enough to form a wave that engulfs the flame, leaving the water dark. Margaret grasps hastily, shoves another piece of paper towards me, and I swiftly light it and throw it out. The water is still only for a moment before fire is put out again. Splash of an unseen hand. We freeze. I look at Margaret from the corner of my eye and whisper to her. Both Margaret and I are still in the middle of the narrow bridge, only inches away from the edge.
Give me all the paper you have left. I will throw it back the way we came. We need to get these creatures away from us.
Margaret nods shakily and dumps her remaining papers into my hand. She empties more from her pockets and places those in my arms as well. At least we didn't skimp on the amount made. I set them aflame as fast as possible, lighting two at a time and launching them at the edge of the water before fire can consume the paper. A chorus of hiss erupt from the Nixie underwater as a flurry of flames come towards them. A torrent of splashes echoes from beyond the bridges as they grow increasingly agitated as the foreign objects in the lake. I keep a few pieces of paper in my hand and whip to Margaret.
Start moving! Quickly!
Margaret nods, slightly baffled. The two of us start sprinting towards the narrow bridge while the Nixie swim around us, distracted by the flames. Once the previous batch of lights had burned out, I ignite the rest of the paper in my hands and toss a collection of flames into the lake. That's the last distraction we'll get. We force our feet to go even faster as the sound of sloshing water unheartedly murmurs grows close at our heels. I gasp loudly. The bridge below shudders, lurches to the side. Two of us brace against each other to steady ourselves as the bridge slowly tilts back into place. We go as we eye each other. This was not something we had prepared for. The bridge can't hold weight properly. If we step out of line, it could break. Yet, we aren't afforded even a moment's reprieve as the sound of the Nixie break through the haze, racing thoughts. We advance down the bridges, this time more aware how we place our footing. Our quick pace means some mistakes are inevitable. The bridge starts to tilt again. The eager eyes look at us from right below the waterline. It bends towards the waiting hands of the Nixie, and I pull Margaret back while leaning my weight to the opposite side.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, hit like. That way I know you're enjoying the content I'm making. Hit subscribe. That way YouTube brings you back Here's Happens Next. I won't take up any more of your time. Have a good day, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.